In the summer of 1876, on a ridge above the Little Bighorn River, George Armstrong Custer and more than 200 men of the 7th Cavalry were surrounded and killed. It became the most famous defeat in American history. The golden-haired general cut down by the very people he had come to conquer. But 8 years earlier, on a frozen river in what is now Oklahoma, that same officer, leading that same regiment, had won the victory that first made his name. Before Custer was the man who lost at the Little Bighorn, he was the man who attacked a sleeping village on the Washita. This is what happened there, and why we still cannot agree on what to call it. Before Little Bighorn, the attack on the Washita. To understand that dawn, you have to begin with the man whose village it was. Black Kettle was a peace chief of the Southern Cheyenne, born around 1803, and by 1868 he was roughly 65 years old. He had spent the last years of his life trying to hold the peace and paying for it. On a cold morning in November 1864, Colorado troops attacked his camp at Sand Creek. Black Kettle stood before his lodge and raised the American flag, and beneath it a white flag of truce, certain the soldiers would see them and stop. They did not. More than 150 Cheyenne and Arapaho, most of them women and children, were killed. Black Kettle lived and carried his wounded wife from the field. After Sand Creek, a lesser man might have chosen war. Black Kettle chose peace again, but his authority had limits the army never understood. Among the Cheyenne, a peace chief could counsel and persuade. He could not command. The young men of the warrior societies, the dog soldiers above all, answered to no one. As raiding flared across the plains, Black Kettle could speak for his own camp, and no other. He knew it, and he said so to every officer who would listen. It was the trap of his position. Blamed by whites for violence he could not prevent, and unable to deliver the peace they demanded of him. In October of 1867, on Medicine Lodge Creek, Black Kettle and other Southern Plains leaders met a federal peace commission. The treaties they signed were meant to end the war, reservations and rations and hunting rights, in exchange for the vast lands the tribes were surrendering. But the two sides walked away believing different things. Much of what was promised in speech never reached the paper. Much of what was on the paper was never delivered. Within a year, the annuities and the arms the Cheyenne had been promised were still being withheld, and the peace made at Medicine Lodge was already coming apart. The plains were filling with soldiers and settlers, and the army was in no mood for patience. In the spring of 1867, General Winfield Scott Hancock marched a column into the Cheyenne and Lakota country along Pawnee Fork. The villages, remembering Sand Creek, emptied and fled at his approach, and Hancock, taking their flight as proof of hostility, ordered the abandoned camp burned to the ground. The government's own peace commission would later name that burning as one of the sparks of the war that followed. It was a pattern that would repeat on the Washita, a village judged guilty and punished for the crime of being afraid. It was into this war that George Custer rode. He was not the general of legend. His actual rank was lieutenant colonel, but he had been a Civil War prodigy, a brevet brigadier at 23. On the plains, his star had dimmed. In 1867, he was court-martialed on a string of charges, leaving his command without authority and the harsh treatment of deserters among them. He was convicted and suspended from rank and command for a year without pay. His career might have ended there, but a general named Philip Sheridan wanted Custer for a winter campaign and had him recalled before the suspension was even served. The spark was blood. In August 1868, Cheyenne war parties raided settlements along the Saline and Solomon Rivers in Kansas, killing settlers and taking captives. The raids were real, and they were terrible. But they were not the work of Black Kettle's village. A Cheyenne leader named Little Rock interviewed that August, named the men responsible, and placed their camp elsewhere, not in Black Kettle's band. Black Kettle himself made the same distinction to the army, again and again.
We all want peace, and I would be glad to move all my people down this way. I could then keep them all quietly near camp. But I speak only for my own people. I cannot speak nor control the Cheyenne north of the Arkansas. I am Black Kettle at the Fort Cobb Council, November 20th, 1868.
Philip Sheridan had a different answer to the raids. In the Civil War, he had burned the Shenandoah Valley to starve an army. Now he would carry that same idea to the Southern Plains. His plan was a winter campaign to strike the tribes in the cold months when their ponies were weak and their villages were fixed in place by the snow, and to destroy not only warriors, but lodges, food, and horses. Punishment, he believed, must follow crime. That the punishment might fall on a village which had committed no crime was a possibility his strategy did not pause to weigh. And Black Kettle was still trying to find shelter under that strategy. On the 20th of November, 1 week before the attack, he rode into Fort Cobb with a small delegation of Cheyenne and Arapaho leaders and asked the army for protection. He explained where his village stood, on the Washita, and how many lodges he had. The officer who received him was General William Hazen, and Hazen turned him away. He was a peace officer, he said. The soldiers to the north belonged to Sheridan, the war chief, and he could not shield the Cheyenne from them. Go back to your village, Black Kettle was told. There was nowhere else to go.
To have made peace with them would have brought to my camp most of those now on the war path south of the Arkansas. And as General Sheridan is to punish those at war and might follow them in afterwards, a second Chivington affair might occur, which I could not prevent. I am William Hazen, writing privately to General Sherman on November 22nd, 1868.
Hazen understood exactly what was coming. Chivington was the colonel who had led the slaughter at Sand Creek. A second Chivington affair meant another massacre, and Hazen feared he was about to witness one. He was right. On the 23rd of November, Custer marched south from Camp Supply into a blinding snowstorm with 689 troopers and about a dozen Osage scouts. 2 days later, the Osage cut a fresh trail, the tracks of a raiding party returning home. Custer followed it. He did not know whose village lay at the end of it. The trail led to Black Kettle's. They reached the valley in the dark, in the small hours of the 27th. Below them, in a bend of the frozen Washita, stood some 50 lodges, silent under the snow. Custer divided his regiment into 4 columns and sent them creeping through the night to surround the village on every side. The commanders of those columns are known. The exact directions each one took are less certain, reconstructed long afterward from imperfect accounts. But the design was not in doubt. There would be no warning, no parley, no demand to surrender. At first light, the trap would simply close.
The general plan was to employ the hours between then and daylight to completely surround the village and, at daybreak, to attack the Indians from all sides. I am George Armstrong Custer, describing the plan in 1874.
Inside the village, at least one person sensed the danger. The night before, word had come again that the camp should move at once, and there was talk among Black Kettle's people about whether to go. They decided to wait until morning. Outside the chief's lodge, one of his wives, medicine woman later, spoke against the delay. Her words survive only because a girl who was there remembered them and repeated them nearly 70 years afterward, carried across a lifetime and a language and grief.
I don't like this delay. We could have moved long ago. The agent sent word for us to leave at once. It seems we are crazy and deaf and cannot hear. I am medicine woman later, on the night before the attack, as moving behind woman remembered my words in 1937.
They did not move. At dawn, in the first gray light, the regimental band lifted its instruments and struck up a galloping tune, the signal, and from four sides at once the cavalry came down on the village. A 14-year-old girl named Moving Behind Woman woke to the sound of it.
We became frightened and did not know what to do. We arose at once. At that instant, the soldiers let out terrible yells, and there was a burst of gunfire from them. I am Moving Behind Woman, who was 14 that morning, remembering the attack in 1937.
What followed took only minutes to decide and has taken a century and a half to describe. Warriors ran from the lodges to fight and to buy time. Women and children ran for the river and the ravines. Black Kettle and Medicine Woman later mounted a single pony and tried to cross the Washita. Cheyenne accounts say they were shot down in the water, unarmed, in flight. Custer's memoir, written later, tells it differently, that the chief fired first. No one can now say for certain. What is certain is that the old peace chief, who had survived Sand Creek, did not survive the Washita, and neither did his wife.
He stopped his horse and stared at us. He did not say a word. But then he left, and no one came after that. I suppose he pitied us, and he let us alone. I am Moving Behind Woman, remembering in 1937 the soldier who found me hiding and spared me.
So what was it? A battle or a massacre? The honest answer is that it held both inside it at once. There was real fighting, the Cheyenne resisted, a captain named Lewis Hamilton was shot dead early in the charge, men on both sides were killed in earnest combat, and there was also this, a camp of sleeping families surrounded before dawn and fired into from every direction. The two things were not separate phases of the morning. They happened in the same minutes, in the same few hundred yards of snow.
The regiment galloped through the tepees, firing indiscriminately and killing men and women alike. I am Ben Clark, Custer's chief of scouts, recalling the charge in 1899.
Custer, writing his report the next day, chose his words with care. He was a commander describing a triumph to his superiors, and the language he used to account for the dead in the village was the passive, softening language of a man who did not wish to look too closely at it.
In the excitement of the fight, as well as in self-defense, it so happened that some of the squaws and a few children were killed and wounded. I am George Custer, in my official report of November 28, 1868.
Notice how it is built. It so happened, as though no one had decided anything. The word he uses for the Cheyenne women is a slur, and the whole sentence is shaped to make the killing of civilians sound like weather. And the numbers he reported have never held up. Custer claimed 103 warriors killed, a precise figure, arrived at, he said, by careful count. But his own men later described how that count was actually made.
After supper, the officers were called together, and each one questioned as to the casualties of enemy warriors. Every effort was made to avoid duplications. The total was found to be 103. I am Edward Godfrey, a 7th Cavalry veteran, recalling the count in 1928.
It was not a body count. It was a show of hands around a campfire, warriors and old men and boys folded into a single triumphant figure. And set against it are other numbers entirely. Cheyenne women who were there counted 16 men killed. A scout's letter put it at no more than 20 men and about 40 women and children. Months later, 4 Cheyenne chiefs gave the fullest tally of all: 38 dead, 13 men, 16 women, 9 children. These counts cannot be averaged into one clean number. But every one of them, except Custer's, says the same thing, that many of the dead in Black Kettle's village were not warriors. When the fighting was over, the victory took a colder form. Custer's men set fire to all 51 lodges and everything in them: the buffalo robes, the winter food, the powder, and the clothing that a village needs to live through the cold. Then they turned to the horses. Black Kettle's people owned a herd of some 800 ponies, the wealth and the mobility of the entire community. Custer had them driven together and shot, roughly 675 animals, killed in the snow. It was not a heat of battle act. It was a deliberate decision, and he explained it plainly.
I decided neither to attempt to take the ponies with us, nor to abandon them to the Indians, but to adopt the only measure left: to kill them. I am George Custer, writing about the destruction of the herd in 1874.
And the day was not done with its dead. During the fight, a young major named Joel Elliott had ridden off downstream after a group of fleeing Cheyenne, calling to his men as he went. Elliott's small detachment, roughly 20 men in all, was cut off and killed a mile or two below the village, because the Washita, Custer was now learning, was not one small camp. Downstream lay a great chain of Cheyenne, Arapaho, Kiowa, and Comanche villages, thousands of people, and their warriors were riding toward the smoke. Custer feigned an advance upon them, then slipped away in the dark, taking 53 Cheyenne women and children as captives. Whether he had knowingly left Elliott's men behind to die was a question that would poison his regiment for years. For Custer, the Washita was a triumph, and he made the most of it. Sheridan endorsed the victory, the newspapers celebrated it, and Custer, in time, would tell the story his own way, in a memoir that fixed his version in print. But not everyone saluted. Captain Frederick Benteen, who rode in the same regiment, never forgave the abandonment of Elliott, and he said so, a bitterness that would follow Custer all the way to the Little Bighorn. Among the captives carried back was a Cheyenne woman whose name Custer did not record. Custer later claimed that this unnamed woman challenged him to act like a great chief and give the helpless the treatment they deserved. Her words survive only through Custer, filtered through an interpreter and published 6 years later, so they cannot be independently verified. 8 years later, Custer led the 7th Cavalry against another village on another river, and this time the village was ready. At the Little Bighorn, the encampment was vast, alert, and mobile. The warriors were many, and they were waiting. It is tempting to draw a straight line from the Washita to that ridge. The same regiment, the same commander, the same fatal confidence that a native village could be ridden down at will. But that line is one memory draws, not one the evidence proves. The Washita did not cause the Little Bighorn. It only makes the ending harder to look away from. What then do we call the Washita? The Congress of the United States, in the law that protects the ground, names a battlefield and calls the event both a battle and an attack. The National Park Service that keeps that ground most often says attack. Cheyenne and Arapaho descendants whose ancestors died there have long called it a massacre. Each word is carrying an argument. Battle insists on the resistance that was real. Massacre insists on the civilians killed in an encircled camp whose chief had asked for protection 1 week before. Attack tries to name the deed without judging it. Perhaps the truest thing that can be said is that it was all of these at once, and that the pressure to choose only one of them is itself a kind of forgetting. The Washita was a battle, because men fought and died. It was a massacre, because the fighting fell upon the helpless. And it was the making of a legend who had only 8 years left to live. But strip away the legend, and what remains is a cold bend in a river, a peace chief dead in the water, and a girl in the grass who lived long enough to tell us what she had seen. Their warnings went unheard in their own time. The least that we can do is hear them now.